Hello and welcome to this midweek edition of the Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvoko, and on the show tonight,
all of us as political parties agreed on the following. Parliament must hold President Cyril Ramaphosa accountable for violations of laws, his oath of office, and the Constitution.
opposition parties up the ante. They are going all out to mobilize civil society organizations, trade unions, religious bodies, and other NGOs, all in an attempt to hold President Cyril Ramaphosa over his Palapala farm saga. We asked them how they're hoping to pull it off.
We have 4,000 legitimate traders on our rent roll.
Informal traders and ratepayers organizations of the country's biggest and richest city, meanwhile, are also threatening to mobilize civil society. They believe the latest threats by the City of Johannesburg's mayoral committee to remove sheikhs, illegal traders, and cutting off illegal water and electricity connections has nothing to do with cleaning up the city and ridding it of criminality, but rather a declaration of war against the most vulnerable sections of the city. Those are the issues we're examining on tonight's episode of The Watchdog, which starts right now. It's by no mean feat. It's no mean feat, rather, I should be saying. But the country's leading opposition parties are adamant they can't pull it off.
Opposition parties will initiate and participate in a broader consultation with civil society organizations, opposition parties not represented in parliament, non-profit organizations, trade unions, and religious bodies to consolidate a common approach and response to hold the executive and the president accountable. We will additionally use broad united front to discuss and develop a common approach on the so many socio-economic challenges confronting society, including the rising cost of living, corruption, unemployment, electricity crisis, and rising levels of crime.
While that consultation process gets underway, and as a complementary measure, the opposition, bar the biggest among them, also want a motion of no confidence tabled in Parliament.
All opposition parties, except the Democratic Alliance, agree that in the immediate will introduce a motion of no confidence in Mr. Ramaphosa. We believe that as the leader of the opposition in Parliament, the DA should table the motion. We have assembled a team from amongst ourselves to hold a bilateral engagement with the DA to discuss and finalize the motion of no confidence as a complementary measure to holding Mr. Ramaphosa accountable.
And here's how the parties hope that parliamentary process would unfold.
Opposition parties will request a follow-up meeting with the Speaker of the National Assembly to discuss all accountability issues, including the usage of a secret ballot for motion of no confidence. Opposition parties will intensify our collective and individual court actions against the Speaker of the National Assembly and all other institutions that are attempting to suppress Parliament's constitutional obligation to hold the executive and Parliament accountable. Parliament must be physically convened to deal with all parliamentary issues and its agenda.
Well, to talk more about the hows and whens, I'm joined in studio by African Transformation President Vuyolwethu Zungula. And on the line from the United Democratic Movement, we have its Deputy President Ngabayomzi Kwangwa, Democratic Alliance MP and Justice Shadow Minister Glynis Breitenbach, who was supposed to stand in for her leader, disappeared on us a short while ago. Gentlemen, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. Let's talk first about your efforts to mobilize a civil society. Do you have any idea how long that is going to take place? Because one would assume that time is of essence, and that's why you have decided to come together and decide on the things that you have decided. Mind you, we have an election in about 2 years' time.
Firstly, Budvuyo, I think the action by the opposition parties in coming together, putting aside all of the differences we may have and focusing on two things. One, ensuring that President Ramaphosa is held accountable for what transpired in Palapala. Secondly, we mobilize and we engage the civil society in terms of finding solutions for the socio-economic problems that we face in our country, because everyone can see that the country is gravitating towards being a failed state. So as the forum, we've agreed that on the 31st of August, we will be having that broad consultation with churches, trade unions, basically all South Africans will be gathered in one room where we can discuss the state of the country and how collectively we can work together to rescue South Africa from the state that we are currently seeing. We are seeing a country that has an increase in the cost of living, increase in criminality, increase in gender-based violence, increase in unemployment and poverty. Therefore, this cannot be left to the ruling party or a few members in the National Assembly. We need to come together as a country through the elected representatives, which is political parties in parliament and other formations, political formations that are not in parliament, including the churches, civil society, and each and every South African that feels they can make a contribution in terms of rescuing South Africa from what it is now.
But what makes you, think that your message will strike a chord when you have those conversations with those civil society organizations? And I'm asking this at the back of my mind, sort of racing back to what happened during the Zuma era, the things it took to actually mobilize organs of civil society to a point where they were then able to also convince even those within the governing party to actually go with them. What do you think you have going for you now, which can actually be attributed to this person that you are saying should, account? Because remember, back in the day, there was a lot that Jacob Zuma was accused of, and it was those things that actually persuaded many among his own comrades to actually, support political parties which had come together, which is what you are doing now, but also, of course, other civil society organizations who felt the same.
This forum is anti-no one. This forum is about, firstly, the rule of law and the equality before the law. Secondly, this forum is taking into account what is common knowledge of what happened in Palapala, and the president has not denied it. And we are seeing how the media, the NGOs, and some of the institutions, state institutions, are actually protecting the blatant abuse of power. For example, you have a president that is accused of serious crimes such as kidnapping, money laundering, and the torturing of people. Any self-righteous South African who believes in human rights and democracy should be worried if the first citizen is accused of such crimes. And we know that many South Africans have been speaking in their respective corners about how uneasy and uncomfortable they are when the first citizen is basically accused of such. And these institutions, from your SARS, your Reserve Bank, your Hawks, the Office of the Public Protector, for them to have more than 70 days to investigate a simple thing of saying actually tax was declared and paid for Palapala, it shows how this person who's a culprit is protected. So what we believe is going to bring us together, it is those facts, and the facts whereby if you're looking at the state of the country, look at what happened in Krugersdorp, what has been happening in the shootings, what has been happening in the rising cost of living. All South Africans are generally unhappy about the state of the country. So with that in mind, we believe that indeed people are going to come together and we are going to find amicable solutions to the problems we face.
Kwankwa, we lost you there for a few seconds. I don't know though if you got a bit of what I asked Vuyolwe to earlier. What I was asking was whether as the opposition you have or you think you can muster the support of civil society organizations with the issues that you are putting on the table. In other words, is Palapala big enough a rallying point in the same way that, state capture was, in the same way that Nkandla and other things were during the time of Jacob Zuma, when as the opposition, you were able to mobilize civil society, but of course with a great deal of help from people within the ANC, whether it was veterans, or former ministers, or former top bureaucrats who were sick and tired of what Zuma was doing at the time.
Vuyo, thank you very much, and good evening to the viewers at home. I think I need to jog your memory a little bit down the memory lane and remind you that even with President Zuma, when we started the campaign against him and his government because of what was happening at the time, there were just a few of us. Most people actually laughed us off, thinking that we were wasting time, that we would not be able to mobilize enough support from civil society and from across the political spectrum to be able to do exactly what we did during the Zuma years. You will recall that the campaign of the opposition started immediately after 2009, when we picked up a number of issues saying at the time President Zuma was not the right person for the job. And what surprises us now is that what President Ramaphosa is accused of, what the allegations against him are very serious and are very weighty for any person who especially occupies the office of the head of state. And what we don't understand is that while the bar was set very high for former President Zuma in any transgression that he was accused of, it seems like what now people expect us to do is to mollycoddle President Ramaphosa and not hold him to account for what he has done. And if he's found to have actually broken the law or have done something wrong, that he must be removed. Whether you remove him by the Section 89 of the Constitution, which is impeachment, which is what President Zungula and ATM are doing, or the motion of no confidence, which is Section 102, which is part of the resolutions of the opposition collective. But all that we want, or whether you want to explore the ad hoc committee, as we did with President Zuma, that the Democratic Alliance is proposing, but all that we require and want as opposition is to say that President Cyril Ramaphosa needs to be held to account for what he has done. And if he is found wanting or he has committed any criminal offense or has broken any law in his conduct, then he must be removed from office. It's as simple as that. And all that we're trying to do, we're trying to set in motions processes that are going to look into this matter, processes that are going to investigate these matters fairly. And once we have a determination, then we decide what we want to do with them. But we can't sit back as the opposition. Remember, Vuyo, it's a point we always emphasize that oversight is the purview of the opposition. You are likely to have governing party people trying to protect their president because that is their leader. But when you come to parliament, it's us who are responsible, who have the responsibility to ask the difficult and uncomfortable questions. In fact, it was us who did exactly that during the President Zuma years when it was not fashionable to do so. And we're continuing to do our job as we have been elected by the people to do it.
But I mean, you will also accept that for lack of a better description, the ANC networks were actually critical. I mean, to convince and win over those ANC veterans, to be able to convince or win over people who were in very strategic positions, whether it was in the private sector, business and other organizations, whether it was in think tanks, across the country, of which there was, many had mushroomed at the time, and they were playing very critical and influential roles, because a lot of the ANC continues to have the biggest support by far, compared to the rest of the political parties. So it was important for those people who were trusted by the ANC's faithful to actually play their part, on the back, of course, of what you as political parties and everyone else did. And that is really the point I'm making.
Voyo, we had to start the campaign. That's the point I'm making. Up until we started the campaign, no one wanted to actually talk about the issues we're raising. It was only when the campaign started gaining momentum that you had a lot of Johnny-come-lately who wanted to be relevant as well. And some obviously were concerned about the country and joined in that important campaign. And that's exactly the same strategy we're going to implement and apply now. We're not going to change it. It's the fact that you have allegations and the fact that we want investigations, it's precisely the outcomes of those processes that are going to determine whether there is a campaign for us that we can ensure it gains momentum towards the removal of President Cyril Ramaphosa. President Zungula is quite right that we are not anti-President Cyril Ramaphosa, but we are pro rule of law, we are pro principles that support our constitutional democracy. And if President Ramaphosa is found to have broken the law, we must hold him to account the same way that we expected the same when President Zuma, there were allegations against President Zuma. This is the point you don't understand. It's as if you go to other circles, because you are dealing with President Ramaphosa, I don't know whether the standard is that you must speak English with the Model C accent in order for you not to be held to account. It's as if, no, President Cyril Ramaphosa should not be held to account. And yet, some sections and sectors of the media were the first ones to say these members of parliament are sleeping on duty, these members of parliament are not asking the right and the relevant questions. We're trying to do exactly that with President Ramaphosa. And we are not going to stop until we're able to get the details and the resolutions that we require this particular.
Okay. Now, part of the reason you are doing this, Mr. Zungula, is because you believe that there is a cover-up. On what basis do you say that?
Look, the investigations that have been done, predominantly, if you look at the role that has been played by the Namibian government, they've been forthcoming on what transpired. If you look at how South African government, they've actually denied actually meeting the people from Namibia. It is in that context that you see that the South African government has not been forthright to the people of South Africa regarding Palapala. Let's go to the issue of the public, the Office of the Public Protector. We as the ATM, we wrote on the 5th of June. On the 8th, the Public Protector confirmed that she is doing the investigations. Questions were sent. A few days later, she gets to be suspended. Later on, we learned via court process that indeed there is an arrangement that has been done between President Ramaphosa and the Deputy Public Protector regarding an extension. An extension that was not warranted because the very same president throughout that period had been going out selling animals. He has got time to go, sell animals in his uncalled society, but he's got no time to comply with the request of a Chapter 9 institution. What transpires from there is that he requests another extension, and only then opposition parties, they speak out to say, but why is he given so many extensions? He gets to be threatened to be subpoenaed. Only then, few days later, that he decides to answer those questions. Now, in terms of the law, the Emir Act, the Public Protector's Office is supposed to issue a report within 30 days, failing which, if there is not enough information, they can issue out another report that supplements the one that should have been issued on the 30 days in accordance to the law. That is what the Emir Act is saying. We're sitting here now 70 days later, 77 days later, after this incident has happened. There is no report from the Public Protector. Go to the Reserve Bank. It does not take 70 days for the Reserve Bank to actually confirm whether that foreign currency, it was declared, and Ramaphosa had approval to hold that currency. And also, if you look at the issues surrounding the SARS and any other institutions that have been doing investigations, they've not been handling the situation in a manner that gives confidence to the people that indeed, number one, President Ramaphosa is not treated differently from any other citizen. That is why, if you look at how things are done, they are very, very, they are not forthcoming with the information. Instead, they are speaking less about the about what transpired and what they are acting. If you can go to the Hawks or to the NPA, they'll say, yes, the information, there is a case, there is information, that is there. However, they will not outright say, we are investigating President Ramaphosa. So that is why opposition parties are critical, because we are not at the mercy of President Ramaphosa. All of us are not appointed by him. Whereas if you look at the commissioners in any of these institutions, one way or the other, they're dependent on him to be employed. However, Tina, we are at the mercy of the South African citizens who elected us to hold the executive accountable, especially for such transgressions.
Okay. Mr. Kwankwa, I mean, Glynis Breitenbach was supposed to join us this evening in the place of John Steenhuisen, but the very last minute, she dropped us. Now, do we know, I mean, has the DA told you why they are not so in support of the motion of confidence part, and why you still think, as the EFF leader said earlier, that you can still convince them and you want them to be the ones who actually should table the motion?
No. Look, Vuyo, I would not try to be the spokesperson of the Democratic Alliance.
I'm saying, from what you heard,
I wouldn't want to gossip about their position, but I think the issue for us, I think the statement which was issued by the opposition collective today speaks about the fact that the Democratic Alliance firstly wants to give space to the impeachment process, which has been the motion which has been submitted by ATM. So that we support that process, see it through. But I think the DA also spoke about this thing in the meeting, in the very first meeting that we held, but also it's also contained in the statement that they believe that they want to go the route of an ad hoc committee. If these strategies that we're implementing do not succeed, then they will consider, I'm sure, at the relevant point in time to submit a motion of no confidence. But really, for us, if you look at it, whether it's submitted, filed by the Democratic Alliance or any of the other sister opposition parties, to us, it's still a motion of no confidence, and we'll support it. And it will still achieve the same objective. However, as the opposition collective, I think it's important to maintain and keep the unity to say, if we said at some point that we'd like to, we took a resolution saying the Democratic Alliance would be the most appropriate party as the official opposition to file that motion of no confidence on our behalf. However, if they don't want to do it, I'm sure that opportunity will be given to the next available opposition party to do so. Because all that we want is to make sure that we implement our strategies, the motion of no confidence, the Section 89, the ad hoc committee. All of them can run concurrently. None of these strategies or tactics are mutually exclusive. But I think what is important for us is to also emphasize the point that, Vuyo, you remember when we started with this secret ballot thing, the campaign in 2016, 2017, most people thought we were confused, or we didn't know what we were trying to do up until we won the Concord matter. You'll recall that even when we went to the High Court at the Western Cape High Court, we lost the case, only for us to actually win it at the Concord. In other words, it means that what we need to do now as the opposition collective is to play complementary roles, to say what kind of supportive role can you play to a party that has submitted or filed a motion of no confidence, but also how do we forward this important strategy of ours of ensuring that we get a secret ballot, whether we get, especially when it comes to a motion of no confidence. So the fact that they still want to consider their steps going forward, and the fact that they believe that they have an alternative strategy that they would like to explore, which is the ad hoc committee, it doesn't mean that the motion of no confidence strategy is not going to be explored or even implemented, if you like.
Gentlemen, we're going to end it there for tonight. Thank you very much for your time. Representatives of two political parties, part of a whole group of political parties represented in Parliament. They are out to mobilize civil society organizations, NGOs, religious bodies, trade unions. They're all in an attempt to hold President Cyril Ramaphosa to account over his Palapala farm saga. We'll see, of course, what comes out of this particular process. All these efforts were announced this afternoon after these opposition parties met here in Gauteng. Up next, we're going to look at how informal traders and ratepayers of the country's richest and biggest city here, Johannesburg, are threatening to mobilize civil society. This is after, of course, the city of Johannesburg's mayoral committee members said they are going to remove shacks, they are going to deal with illegal traders, they are going to cut off illegal water and electricity connections. But of course, these civil society organizations and some political parties are arguing that this has nothing to do with cleaning up the city, ridding it of corruption, but rather an attack on and a declaration of war against the most vulnerable sections of the city of Johannesburg. We're going to have that conversation right after this. Welcome back. This is the Watchdog, your public service and accountability program. Now to this. The Johannesburg Council's MMC for Public Safety, David Dembe, has vowed to take a tough stance against the criminality in the city. The former policeman says restoring the rule of law by enforcing the city's bylaws is a non-negotiable. He was speaking during his maiden performance report presentation in Martindale, Johannesburg, today.
MMC David Dembe says his department will enforce the city's bylaws without fear or favor. These include the removal of shacks, illegal traders, and cutting off illegal water and electricity connections. This forms part of the city's efforts to curb runaway crime and ensure the residents are safe in the streets.
We can't be threatened by people on the basis of saying that JMPD is xenophobic. It can't be. We have to fight and ensure that the city is clean. In one of these so-called bylaws, that's where they are selling drugs. One, the issue of cable theft, it's where it is being hidden.
Dembe has noticed that most of the stolen copper cables end up in the inner city. He's called on hawkers to respect the city's bylaws and to apply for permits in order to continue trading.
We have 4,000 legitimate traders on our rent roll, and those 4,000 will be required to authenticate themselves as we implement the new permit system that talks to Home Affairs. It touches on to the Home Affairs National Identification System, as well as the Asylum Seeker Database, as well as Revenue Services.
In its performance report, Public Safety said 1,600 kilograms of cables have been recovered in the last 6 months. Plans to increase police visibility during peak traffic to reduce crimes like smash and grab are also on the cards. Balentle Mthethwa, SABC News, Johannesburg.
For a discussion on some of the issues raised in that package, please welcome Councillor Nguli Mbundu, a member of the Mayoral Committee for Economic Development at the City of Johannesburg. Mpho Sisedinyaya is the ANC's Shadow MMC for Public Safety, joins us on the line. Brian Palo, who is in studio, is the General Secretary of the South African Informal Traders Alliance. And Trevor Ngwane is an academic based at the University of Johannesburg, but with a history as a long-time activist well versed with the city's ratepayer politics. Good evening to all of you, gentlemen. Thanks very much for your time. Let's start perhaps with the issue of informal traders. And this is a conversation we were supposed to have a long time ago between the three of us, but other issues intervened, including the president having to speak the one day. But very briefly, Councillor, why dealing with the informal traders, the way you've decided to deal with them, is so important for you, for the city?
Thank you, Vio. I think there is no economy that thrives in lawlessness. And what we are seeing in Johannesburg is a state of lawlessness. And we've got policies in place to ensure that we promote the legal operation in informal trade to improve the lives of our informal traders. And therefore, it is important for us to implement the policy as it has been passed by council. So our desire here is to ensure that we create a safe and business-friendly city that talks to one of our mayoral priorities as the multi-party government of the city of Johannesburg.
Clean and safe city. It's lawlessness that the council is dealing with. Your thoughts?
Thanks a lot, Vuyo. Thanks for inviting us. Look, cleanliness, that's exactly what we're fighting for. Our members, we wish they can work in a very clean, neat, managed space. Unfortunately, the city of Johannesburg is nowhere to assist us to get into that level. The MMC is talking about implementing the newly approved or policy, kind of. That's what the action that they did in the city of Johannesburg. You've got nothing to do with that policy.
What makes you say that?
He's simply saying that there's a policy, newly approved policy by the council. Their action, it had nothing to do with the implementation of that policy. We know that policy. We studied that policy. We wanted, when we started debating that policy back in 2016, we wanted to know exactly who should come and trade in South Africa, specifically in Johannesburg in this instance. On which grounds? What is needed from him or that? But then, Vuyo, we see in the country what is happening. The politicians, they tend to turn a blind eye when it comes to laws of this country. They come, they want to do as they please because of the power that is invested in them by the citizen. As citizens also, we have that responsibility to make sure that we hold these politicians accountable. That's exactly what we are doing, and we'll make sure that they are accountable.
Just for the sake of our viewers, I mean, if you're saying the cleanliness and safety is what your members have been asking for, and then he says that's exactly what these bylaws are giving you and the process that they have now, unless where exactly do you differ with them? Is it in the house? In other words, how they're handling this whole thing? Or is it the policy themselves? You think they go against what he is promising they are giving us?
Actually, we support the city that got very active implemented bylaws. At present moment, there's no such. What we are against from their action, it's when the MMC will just wake up today and say there should be no trading in this street and claim that he is implementing bylaws. There's no such. If ever you're implementing bylaws, people will be working. You come, you make sure those that are not supposed to be trading are not trading. That's simple what bylaws speak about, and we support that. And we've been urging the city of Johannesburg to work hand in hand with us to make sure that those people that are not supposed to be there, they're not there because they compete with the legitimate members. People that are given estates allocated by the city of Johannesburg. Actually, they are paying monthly fees to the city of Johannesburg. Yeah. They compete unfairly so, but the city of Johannesburg is nowhere. I can tell you, Vuyo, the city of Johannesburg is divided into two. There's another side they are calling it central business. It's not managed by the city of Johannesburg. There are about 4,000 members that side that are trading. There's another side where the MMC's operation was conducted. They've also got 4,000 that is managed by the city of Johannesburg. It's chaotic on the side of the city of Johannesburg. It's very neat and clean on the other side. That's what we are saying. We believe that we don't need police. We don't need to be policed when we are doing business. We're not criminals. It's very disturbing when Mr. Tembe is saying people are selling drugs, and yet he's the MMC of safety, and so we should simply go and arrest those people if we've got those facts.
So we'll hear what the MMC has to say about that and why, the two sides are, are operating the way. I'm keen to know what the opposition, the ANC, thinks of this whole thing. Councillor?
No, thank you very much, Mr. Vuyo, and good evening to the viewers out there. Look, we as the African National Congress in the city of Johannesburg, we would want to indeed welcome the view that seeks to implement the policy that is governing the city of Johannesburg. However, it is our view that this implementation of the policy must never be a populist stance that we see from the Democratic Alliance city or administration. We also don't want an implementation of the policy that is also selective in addressing the challenges that are faced by our people. The issue of the lawlessness must be the program, or rather the priority of the city, to make sure that we address and attend to that particular issue, especially when it comes to the illegal traders that may not necessarily be allowed to be trading on whatever places that are not. But we have a problem in the manner in which the MMC Tembe and those of Mbundu are carrying out this particular process. It is a process that seeks to, in an actual fact, disadvantage our people, but also to exclude our people from the economic activities that seeks to benefit them in our community.
How so, if I may ask? What is it exactly that you have a problem with?
Our problem is the stand in which they are actually implementing it. I mean, it's very selective. What they would normally do is to just go and harass the people that in actual fact are in the correct sense of the stand that should be trading. But when you go to the city of Johannesburg, when you go to the market, you would see that there's plenty of people that are illegally foreigners that are also trading, and they've got no problem with, because they know exactly that what is it that they are benefiting themselves, but also the selective way in which they are also implementing the same policy that they claim they also represent. I mean, I can make a typical example. One of the things that they did themselves was to actually breach the same conduct, especially Tembe, when he actually unleashed the JMPD to go and close the streets only for a church to be able to give problems to the community in Soweto. And you claim to be a leader that seeks to actually address or attend to issues that are there to make sure that the city is properly run. I'm saying this is the type of an attitude and selective way in which they are taking this issue moving forward.
Councillor Mbundu, you had the allegations and accusations. Instead of doing, Councillor Tembe doing his job, busy harassing the informal traders. You know exactly where the problems are, and that's what you'll be dealing. That's what he should be dealing with. Instead of going about this, the roundabout way, and by introducing new laws that have nothing to do with the problem that you should be addressing proactively.
Well, there's no new laws that have been introduced. The informal trade policy was in fact started under the ANC administration. It went through public participation, where the informal traders were consulted. They've had an opportunity to make an input. It eventually went to Section 79 oversight. It went to council. It was passed. All we are simply doing is implementing the policy that we found. And our approach is to do it block by block. You need to secure a block. make sure that it is functional, and then move on to the next block.
1 second. Councillor, these are your policies after all. Why are you crying foul now? They're only implementing what you didn't implement.
Absolutely. That's why I said what they do is that they are selective in implementing. They choose. I mean, and I just made an example with that, what you just did a few weeks ago, that they only implement these policies as and when it suits them, not as and when it should be, benefiting the residents of the city of Johannesburg. It only suits them as and when they've got a particular interest. And we're saying in that particular way, it can't be.
Okay, maybe the block by block, where you are starting next, talking about block by block, hopefully answers your question as to both your questions, in fact, or the same point you made, both of you, that you're being selective.
I just find it disingenuous on the part of the councillor. I think they know exactly what it is that we're doing. We can't be everywhere all the time. We've got X number of capacity to do this, and we've taken a decision to start somewhere and progress in that particular instance. And let me give you a scenario, for example. We've got a rent roll, 200 names only that are supposed to be at De Villiers Street. But when you got to De Villiers Street, there were over 600 traders. And that in itself tells you that there's something incorrect, where trading is happening in the middle of the road, a direct violation of bylaws, preventing the city to be able to deliver on the services. So we really had to focus on getting that part done right, and then start to expand into the other areas. With regards to the market, it's our next stop. In fact, when we test our new permit system, we are testing it at the market because it's a fully self-service environment that has got an opportunity center for applying as well as implementing. So we've got a
So no one is being or going to be discriminated against?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's not in our interest to discriminate against anyone. All we are going to discriminate against is illegality. We want to make sure that...
But have you entertained the possibility of where there may be misunderstandings or perhaps a misreading of both your intentions and the things that you've done? You could, enter into conversations with, organizations like the informal traders, and of course even your opposition, which has constituencies across the city.
Correct. So opposition is part of what we call Section 79 subcommittee. The Section 79 is an oversight committee that overlooks the work that we do as MMCs. The opposition is represented there. So if there's issues to ventilate, they're ventilated there. They had a look at this. They have a platform to be able to hold us accountable on that. So we have an open door as economic development. As part of the policy, we are supposed to have a task team that is made up of the city's respective departments, as well as an informal trade forum. And those have now been set up. Now we're at the level of setting up the informal trade forum. So we're simply just following the step-by-step process in terms of implementing. What is quite interesting, in particular with regards to my colleague on my left, is that we've got over 15 informal trade associations in the city of Johannesburg. And only their cluster of 3 have a problem with what we're implementing. And the rest are in support.
Okay. Mr. Ngwane, I want to bring you in here, and the reason we had to call you at the last minute is that from what our journalists on the ground picked up, it wasn't just about the informal traders. This campaign seems to be all-encompassing. They're talking about the city, that is, or the mayoral committee. It's talking about the removal of shacks. It's talking about cutting off illegal water and electricity connections. Just your thoughts, given the history of these particular issues.
Thank you, Vuyo. And it's a very good place to start with the historical aspect. Of course, there's also the social, economic, and political. But just historically, under apartheid, a good city, the Johannesburg, which people talk about with nostalgia, was a city without black people. A city which was declared clean because every black person was kicked out at 6 p.m. due to the curfew. Also, remember that apartheid, the policy was to suppress independent means of making a livelihood by black people. So agriculture was suppressed, black agriculture, black business. There was a virtual war on black informal street trading in Johannesburg. I remember clearly when I first came to Johannesburg a long time ago, those poor hawkers being harassed by white police every day. And the whole point, Vuyo, was to make sure that black people, are cheap labor to be exploited.
Let's cut to the chase. Do you think successive ANC and later Democratic Alliance-led councils did much, if anything, to reverse what you have just described, that historical situation?
They lack vision, Vuyo. I read the Johannesburg informal trading policy. It's top-down, it's prescriptive, it's bureaucratic, it emphasizes law enforcement, it's adversarial. Law enforcement means there's a tendency to criminalize, small-scale businesses.
Well, you've had Councillor Mbundu saying we are only implementing what the ANC came up with.
They are correct. So the ANC is playing a double game, as we saw only now at Tembisa. Remember, Tembisa flew up. I'm not changing the subject. I'm giving an example because, the council there, which is led by DA coalition, cut the water subsidy, free basic water. But it turns out that it's the ANC-controlled National Treasury which was putting pressure on this municipality in particular to do this. So the ANC is playing a double game, and that is why actually it is losing these metros. Now it's trying to get them back, but it's true. I mean, that gentleman from Action SA, although their policy is, xenophobic, we know that, and we know what MMC Mbundu has done, attacking the Socio-Economic Rights Institute, threatening them with violence, putting pictures of staff members and family members, including women and children, on social media, inviting violence. And they were even condemned by the Department of Justice and Correctional Services. They are all the same, Vuyo, except that maybe Action South Africa is more explicitly xenophobic. But we saw also recently, Kagiso, the ANC is embracing the xenophobic anti-poor line.
Well, let's hear from both of them. Last words from you, gentlemen. Councillor, are you, as the ANC, embracing this xenophobic line?
We will not embracing such. In an actual fact, I think what the latter speakers just said was actually misquoting what the African National Congress stands for. And we can put it here, right here, to confirm that it is the African National Congress that continue to advocate for free basic water. It is this led administration that came in and actually cut off that particular water. And it is not surprising that they are now opting to unleash the JMPD to enter and attack our people on the basis of illegal connections of water. And when we as the ANC have said that the water is life and it cannot be compromised on anything, we continue to advocate for all these particular issues. But also what is important is to continuously make sure that those that are here in this country legally should be respected as they are here.
Quick last word, Councillor Mbundu.
I think this narrative of xenophobia is really tired. We believe that thriving cities are built on the back of immigration, and we believe that, and we also say South Africa is open to the people of the world, but they must be here legally and they must respect the laws of our country. So if us fighting for legality and the protection of the sovereignty of our people is xenophobic, they are entitled to their opinion. But we are not going to stop. We are going to make sure that we reclaim the city of Johannesburg. We're going to make sure that it is business friendly, it is safe, and that our people have got economic opportunities.
Gentlemen, let me thank all of you for coming through, and for most of you at this at a very last minute. Really appreciate it. Yes, we didn't do justice to the conversation, but at least we did, perhaps hopefully correct some of the perceptions that may still be lingering out there. And that's our show for tonight. To join us again tomorrow evening, same time. Have a good night.